And now, fresh off a 30-year break from his life in over-the-air radio, here's the host of the most originally named 15 Years Too Late podcast, JaySapChats.
There he is.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. Luke
All
DePron,
right.
ladies and gentlemen. Luke DePron.
And we're in.
Look at you. God,
In and at it.
man. How do I look like you? Can we talk about that I want to talk about that for an hour. How I look like you.
It's the hair, man. You know, anybody with the shaved head.
I don't know, man. Dude, like, you got to be, like, women stop you on this. You've been approached by women before, right? Tell me the truth.
Oh, goodness. You know, I live in a primarily gay community, so
Okay.
I have another, I get the other side of the coin a bit.
All right. Listen, when I worked at a dry cleaners in Las Vegas, I was constantly propositioned. I always felt extremely grateful, frankly, because I was young and handsome and a full head of hair like you. I no longer do. And yeah, I was flattered, to be candid. I thought it was great.
That's definitely the way to take it.
Oh, for
That's
sure.
Flattery, for
Of
sure.
course. Yeah, totally. All right. Well, Luke DePron is our guest today, and he is the founder of the Fit Men Project. And frankly, found me online on LinkedIn. This is how it happened. I was in my journey, which I documented on LinkedIn. I came back from the Super Bowl at 194 pounds and disgusted with myself and life. No, I'm serious. Like, disgusted. Like, literally,
it's a great place to be.
It was terrible. I mean, I was in New Orleans. You would have thought I was like a Hoover vacuum cleaner the way I ate, like literally with like complete reckless abandon. All my clothes were tight. My favorite clothes didn't fit. Tell me if any of this rings a bell.
Oh yeah.
All right. My clothes didn't fit. I had seen 199 point something on the scale previously in the beginning of the year, early January. And, and then I started moderating, right? Like,
Sure.
3 scoops instead of 2 or 4 instead of 4. But yeah, I got fed up and I just decided to make a change, wrote about it on LinkedIn that I was going to become accountable. Probably 3 or 4 weeks into that journey, you found me. You and I started to have conversations. We became friends and here we are.
Love it. Power of LinkedIn, man. And I love meeting like an energetic, I know you're an East Coaster, like let's go full throttle energy guy.
Yeah.
I am too. So
yeah. Well, you're not an East Coaster, are you?
No, I'm a Midwest guy, but the energy,
you're
I'm
a Saluki.
I am from Illinois. Yeah.
No, you're a Saluki.
Southern
right?
Illinois. That's Southern Illinois. My mom went to that school, I think.
You didn't go to Illinois State?
Illinois State. We were the Redbirds, I believe.
The Redbirds.
Yeah.
Got it.
I think the Salukis are Southern Illinois, which
Southern
my mom
Illinois
went
is the Salukis. Okay, you're a Redbird. All right,
think.
cool. So you grew up in Illinois?
Yep, on the border of Iowa. So I live in California now, and anytime I tell anybody out here, "Oh, I'm from Illinois," instantly they go, "Oh, Chicago," and my response is, "Think more Iowa," just to give them a better idea of it.
So did you grow up like a St. Louis Cardinals fan versus a Cubs fan, or?
I was a Cubs fan.
Okay.
Fun fact: got to play a high school baseball game in the original Busch Stadium.
Fun.
After a Cardinals game in front of like the crowd that decided to stick around and hit a game-winning triple to the warning track in Busch Stadium. So
that's cool.
My fun athletic moment as a kid.
Where'd it go? We're in the warning track, left center, right center?
Right field. So I was behind it.
Oh, okay. You're a right-handed batter.
Yeah, I'm a right-handed batter. So I would say I was behind it, but I was able to get it to the wall and I slid into third. And it was pretty funny because am I allowed to swear on here?
You can do whatever you want on here.
Okay. I remember sliding into third and I pop up and my coach goes, "You motherfucker." And it is because he was more aware of like how cool of a moment this is. Like, dude, you're in a major league ballpark with, a decent amount of fans stuck around because they could probably still drink and hang out.
It's funny.
And he's like, ninth inning, game-winning triple to the warning track, and I slid. He's like, "You motherfucker!"
That's funny.
And just because he kind of recognized how cool it was more than I did.
love that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
So let's talk about your upbringing just for a moment. We'll get into the. You focus on men. You focus on men's fitness. We'll get into your journey. I want to talk about your journey, but I found that for so many entrepreneurs, things that happen to them when they're young really impact the journey that they're on. So you grow up a country, city,
City,
town, what?
Town. Yeah. I'm from a kind of a unique little place called the Quad Cities. So there's two cities in Illinois, and then right across the river, so we're a border community, there's two cities in Iowa. And so like I would go to the movies in Iowa because there's like, quote, less traffic to just go across the bridge. So we kind of used it all. But at the same time, it's like all it takes is 30 minutes. And it's like I had an uncle with a farm, and it's like I grew up every year going camping on the farm, and so I could go out and get that experience. So I got to grow up like with nature, but in a city. I mean, collectively, that community is probably 250,000 people. My hometown being the smallest and kind of most, unfortunately, economically diving down right now. But yeah, it was a good mix of, I got to have that like, not full city, but like it's not country, but I could get close to it. It didn't take long to like experience, that side of it either.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. I mean, how many stoplights in your town? A lot?
Oh, no, lots. Yeah, lots. Because again, like when I say like, if you were in my, where I grew up, my dad's bike shop, which I'm sure we'll talk about. Like if I'm driving down the road and I just continue, it's like, it goes from Rock Island to Moline. Like it just changes. So you're right into the next thing. There's no long stretch of country road to get to it. It just rolled into the next thing. So collectively, again, there was about 250,000. John Deere is where I'm from. So like, John Deere,
so you're from Moline, like Moline?
So I'm from Moline. So I'm from Rock Island. Next to it is Moline.
Moline,
that's the one everybody knows.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so a lot of your friends' parents worked at the John Deere factory or worked with John Deere?
My community was upheld by John Deere, and then we have what's called the Arsenal, which is a government where I think they were making Humvee doors. Okay. So like those two pieces, if like those two ever left that community, that would be in trouble.
Gotcha. All right. Any brothers and sisters?
So I have a sister 2 years older than me, who now lives down in St. Louis, Missouri, and my parents have since followed. They lived there. They grew up in this area their whole life. My dad had a business for 47 years. Shut it down. We can talk about that. Couldn't sell it in that area, and they've relocated to Missouri, and so now home to go visit family. I fly to St. Louis.
Okay, mom and dad are together still.
Yep, live next door to my sister.
Next door, like
next
literally
door.
the
literally
house next door to your sister.
Next door.
They get along, obviously, right?
They do. We're very close as a family. I always tell
That's
people,
cool.
my dad is I don't know you're close to your son. My dad, I consider him my best friend.
Love it.
We got to work together for probably 4 or 5 years. And so, yeah, we're very close, and I'm glad. I have a lot less guilt living in San Diego, knowing my sister's as close, and they have grandkids there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really happy with that arrangement.
So, okay. So your mom, and we'll get to your dad's business. Sounds like it was like a single track for you of watching your dad, but your mom work outside the house or just raise the kids?
So my mom worked in the high school the high school she went to, and that I went to. So she worked in the dean's office. So anytime I got kicked out of school, which didn't happen a ton, or kicked out of class, I never got kicked out of school. If I got kicked out of class, I would come down to the dean's office, and of course I was in her alphabet, and so she's like, "Oh, what did you forget? Lunch money?" And I'm like, "No, Miss Wayner told me I was a smart ass and kicked me out." So she worked at the high school, which I think was there was a period for her. My sister had some really major health complications when she was little, and so for her, working in a public school system to have health care was a big deal when my dad was starting a business and dealing with that side of things. So
So your dad was he always an entrepreneur, or did he start the business by necessity? Like, or do you not know any? How did it start? Like he owned a bike shop.
He owned a pedal bike shop. My dad is an absolute hustler. It'd be insane to see what he would have done in today's era with like tech. I mean, he's the old school guy. Like we had handwritten inventory. Like we didn't even have a POS system. Like
Yeah.
it was crazy when I moved to California to a bike shop, and I was like, oh, this is how like technology would have been useful. So he started he got kicked out of college and started his business. He bought it from some friends when it was a hardware sporting goods store when he was 19.
Was he with your mom at that point?
They dated in high school, broke up for like a couple of years in college. And
Okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, he's the guy who I'm like, Steve, I should get you on some podcasts because like his entrepreneurial journey. I mean, the shop that I finally left, at one point he had 6 stores. He was one of the first people to ever have like a magazine where you could order bike parts nationwide. So at one point in our community, he had 6 shops. And I remember as a kid because like one would flood when the creek would get high. And then when I worked with him, it was at his original store he ended up moving back to. And in that original store, we have this attic that I remember doing inventory because I'd have to go up. I would literally take my shirt off to do inventory because it's just 98 degrees in this attic, sweating my ass off. And it's like, I'm up there with pen and paper because God forbid we just scan the UPS barcode into a system to keep our inventory straight. But that's where he used to live, him and my mom and 3 German Shepherds. He had built out, an apartment up there when they were younger, and they lived there. And so, he's gone through that whole thing.
Was he established when he had your sister? I mean, she's older. So were they established in his business, or was he just running through his business did start?
He was growing it then. Yeah.
It's the only job he ever knew, right?
Yeah. And really getting that job or buying that business. He's told me the story. So my grandpa grew up in a shop, like pushing a broom. And my grandpa raised, I think, so there's 6 of them that he raised. 3 were his, or 4 were his, 2 weren't. But he raised 6 kids pushing a broom in a factory and then pumping gas at night. And my dad, when he went to start this thing, like they have to go get a bank. Like I think my grandpa got kicked out of high school for punching the principal.
Crazy,
like that kind of lifestyle. And then so when they went to the bank, because I have heard this story, it's like, they got turned down a bunch of places to get my dad a loan. And it was like, well, the final guy was like, we loan on collateral, cash, and character. And on this one, we're going to do it on character because he had no assets. And my dad really understood. He's like, if this doesn't work, well, I'm going to pump gas and, push a broom and I'll repay it that way. Unfortunately, he made it work and hustled his face off his whole life.
Crazy because there's like literally lending on character doesn't exist anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
could you imagine walking into a bank and they're, well, I know you're a stable guy and have no money or collateral and way to repay us unless this works.
And they were and
take our money.
They were poor, and in my community back in the day, there's above the hill and below the hill. And below the hill typically was poor African American community where my dad grew up, and above the hill was more white, affluent. And so, he was a below the hill kid that didn't come from money. And they were able to, obviously like secure the loan and he was able to buy this business from his friends who had started, again, it was more of like, I think, a hardware sporting goods. So back in the day, he sold rollers, did rollerblades. We did cross country skiing before I was around. Yeah. And then the Midwest, you just didn't get as much snow, and people cross country skied at the golf courses apparently. And then eventually it just became bicycles. I think he did skateboards at one time too.
That still happens up on the in the Northeast, right?
Oh yeah. We don't get much snow there anymore, man.
Well, listen, you don't get much snow in Illinois. You get no snow where you live.
Oh yeah.
And we're like 50-50 even in Boston.
Yeah.
So
I'm a tropical plant now, man. I won't make it anywhere else. I have this nostalgia of winter and seasons, and then I go experience it for just like a couple days, and I go, yeah, I don't have this in me anymore, man. I really don't.
I totally get it. I don't have it in me anymore either. And I'm trying to figure that piece out. So do you have any other jobs besides working at your dad's bike shop growing up?
So after I worked for him, I just had this idea of, I'd actually always wanted to move, and I wanted to move out of the country. And then I met a girl and she kind of ruined that.
But you started working for your dad. Like, listen, I mean, you're son of an entrepreneur. You start working for your dad at like what, 10?
No, actually not. So I played sports growing up, and they were my parents were really big on that of, like being active. So I actually didn't start working with him until I was probably 18. So 18 to like 22. Wow. So post high school. So in high school, I was playing, like when we're playing sports, and it's kind of crazy because today kids, and I know your son plays golf, and I don't know if this was his experience. even trying to be a multi-sport athlete anymore in high school, I feel like is kind of fading away
Totally.
because kids are forced to prioritize. I mean, we had off-season camps. And so like there was a lot of, not to say I couldn't have a job. I had friends that did, but this became the thing of, hey, if I was playing sports, I wasn't working. So then after high school, I started working for him, which is hilarious.
Was your dad at all your games?
Yeah. I mean, and I can tell you as a kid, like I remember as a kid when my dad, and again, ton of respect to him for this. I remember as a kid waiting, we lived in a cul-de-sac, and I can remember like my mom, we'd come home and I'd come around the corner and I'd be looking for the bike and hike van. If it was in the drive, dad was home. And the amount of times that he played catch with me after work. And what people don't understand about that type of business is he had a business that, like, even when I worked there, like we did 12 months of business in 6 months. There's nothing in the winter. So it was 6 months of grind. And this is an owner operator situation. So there's no manager. I mean, there was a manager by title, but like you clean the toilets, you built the bikes, we did the repairs, you did the sales, and he's the face of it. I mean, and I'm talking like people would call the bike shop and they'd be like, "Hey, is Steve there?" And I'd be like, yeah, it's super busy. He's with a customer. Yeah, just a second. And then like 3 minutes later, he gets on the phone and I can hear him say, "Yeah, we close at 6." But like, they just got to talk to Steve. And so for him to come home,
and he did that across 6 stores.
Well, back in the day, I'm sharing that story from when I worked with him. But it makes me think about how busy he would have been to then come home and like, all right, let's go play catch. And we played a lot of catch growing up, which was really cool. So yeah, he definitely
baseball was your primary sport?
I played baseball and football. I loved football. I was a much better baseball player. I was, I graduated at 6 feet, like 160. So I was out there playing football as a string bean, and baseball. I was a fairly good center fielder.
Were you college driven?
I didn't play college.
Looking to play in college, or did you where was your head? Where's an 18-year-old Luke's head relative to like keep going in sports, business, entrepreneurship? You just watch your dad. You really haven't worked outside of, where's your head at 18?
It's interesting because I'm going on vacation here in a few weeks, and I'll be spending some time with my nephew. And if I were to often we talk life, and not that I'm sitting here sharing all sorts of wisdom with him, but obviously I'll share my experiences. And one thing in retrospect, I don't feel like I was really intentional with decision making when I was younger. Things were just kind of unfolding. So I had looks for colleges for baseball. I remember going and doing a showcase up in Chicago in front of pro scouts. I had arm issues to where I could throw my arm out in literally one throw from center field. So I was, there was a point where I was taking prescription Vioxx, which has been pulled from the market. I wouldn't say I was abusing it in like a dependency issue, but I was absolutely I was pounding like painkillers to try to play baseball. So I think that was probably a deterrent of
at 18.
Yeah, in high school. Like 16, 17, it was crazy because I could watch like other pitchers or our pitchers who could like throw the ball repetitively, where I'm like, I had days where I'm like, oh, I can tell it's going to be bad. And it's like, I hope a ball doesn't come out here, and here comes one, and I'm going to throw it to home, and I'm going to do it. And it was just the most extreme pain. And to the point where like after I was at a showcase in Chicago in front of all these pro scouts, and like I threw it out to where if somebody wanted to like shake my hand, I'd have to use my other arm to lift my arm up. So that was a bit of a deterrent, probably for athletics. And then in college, I did decide, I was like, I'm going to walk on at Illinois State to play football because I was passionate about it.
Okay.
And then I was getting in shape to do that, and then I ended up changing majors. And by changing majors as late as I was like, I literally schedule wise can't do this because I'm playing catch up. Because I shifted from business to the kinesiology department.
So hindsight's always 20/20. You said that you didn't have intentionality when you were
as much as I probably would have.
But what would that have looked like? Like, what would listen, we look back on our lives and we think to ourselves these types. Like, what would have intentionality look like as you think through that?
Yeah, great question. And is this a story of regret? Like, I don't think so necessarily. And I kind of think of this, like if I were to have this conversation with Noah, my nephew. So like I probably like I loved football. So it's like, hey man, go somewhere where you could have played that. Right. I picked a school I went to Northern Illinois originally because I was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I'm like going to go there because like they have a good business program, and I did business. So I probably would have been a little bit more intentional of, hey, what do you actually like? What do you want to do? And college did feel like just the traditional route, and my sister had went, where realistically, like, hey, maybe you're not even ready for college. Maybe you should go explore a couple years Australia style, which was the plan after I graduated. I was going to go to Australia for a year. I had friends there. I was going to move to Spain for a year to learn a language. So again, I made that decision on that college kind of based on a whim, to the point where 4 years later, and I've had this conversation with other parents about their kids. It's like 4 years later, I'm sitting in an accounting class, and it's like, I hate this stuff. So I'm like, what am I like focused on outside of school? And it's like, I was reading about nutrition and exercise. So I ended up shifting gears to the kinesiology department, not knowing what I'm really going to do with that.
Yeah.
Come full circle today, I don't technically need my degree to do what I'm doing. I could do it without. So, maybe thinking a little bit more of like, hey, what is in game? And maybe I couldn't have done that at the time. Maybe I didn't have like the expanded worldview of what was possible. That's probably true. But if I did, it's like, maybe I would have done a little bit more exploration, I think.
Do you think, and this is going to sound crazy, right, as asking you the question as a grown man, but do you think your parents would have let you go to Australia or travel to Spain? Or do you think it was like, for me, I didn't have a choice. My parents told me I was going to college. I knew I was going to college. Now, I went to the biggest dick around moron school you could go to.
Where'd you go? Arizona State? Where were you at?
UNLV. I mean,
Okay.
Like, Vegas? Come on. 18 years old.
Yeah.
I was insane.
That's hilarious.
But
yeah, that's funny.
But still, like, if I had said to my folks, like, hey, they're going to go travel to Europe, they'd have been like, get the like.
I think they would have been cool with it. I did go to Australia when I was 18 by myself. For like 2
by
weeks.
Yourself?
Yeah. I had someone to stay. I had a friend there. My dad's childhood best friend lived there. He has a daughter who's one of my best friends that we met when she would travel around the world when she was 15, 16 by herself, by the way, to visit all her family. So I met her in Europe when I was a kid. When they lived in London, we went as a family. So I had somewhere to stay.
So you had some worldly experience.
Yeah. So I was getting to do some of that. And, my dad traveled when after college. For him, he spent, I think, a chunk of time in Europe. My mom was very, in high school, her and some girlfriends like drove down to Vegas and like slept in the car and did the whole thing, to New Orleans. So I think my parents would have been receptive to it. They probably would have had a potential concern of partying being a bit of an issue, because I got into some alcohol when I was very young, and there was some concern that perhaps could be problematic for me from a lifestyle standpoint. But I think they would have been receptive to the idea. But even that, it's like, man, if I were to like offer that same advice to like my nephew, it'd be like, even that, move with do that with some intentionality. Like, what skills could you pick up? Like, go to a place where you could learn a language where you're kind of forced. Hey, if you're going to work, like, okay, sure, you could go like, scrub dishes somewhere just to be there, but like maybe there is some like entrepreneurial thing, or maybe there's some like impactful thing that you could pick up some skills as well. So I think I would have probably tried to lean into something like that.
Just a different time. It's crazy because, there's so many things it's like looking back is so easy, Luke.
It is. Well, what's the famous thing? You can't connect the dots looking forward, only looking back.
Is that what I've never heard that.
And by the way, I'm married. Where did I meet? I met my wife the last semester of school. And then when I say I didn't travel because I met a girl, like, there you go. So it's not there's no major regret here, right? And if I don't change schools, I don't meet her. So if I don't have that, like, I hate business revelation. So again, you can connect the dots looking back, and it's very easy. But again, when I think of offering some, to my nephew, again, it would be like, hey, you're 16. You can start to think a little bit more intentionality. Hey, maybe you should be spending some time on AI, because there's a world shift happening right now, and maybe you can be on the forefront of that. But when you're a 16, 17-year-old kid, as I was, I don't know, man, I was interested in girls and drinking.
I lived in an apartment that was it was the last apartment complex before you reached Red Rock in 1994 in Las Vegas. Okay. That if you go to that apartment complex today, you're standing in the direct center of town.
Really? Oh, that's
wild. So do you think that I should have bought the land behind that complex?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
I mean, so you just, it's easy to look. It really is easy to look backwards and
Sure.
on those types of things, or how much
Yep.
land was back 20. No one ever really.
Bitcoin.
You don't. Of course, you don't
Yeah.
think. How about the internet for me? Right. I mean, pre-internet, just domain names. Oh, they're all taken. What do you mean they're all taken?
Here's one. My old man was one of the first people to like really be heavy in eBay, and he had never bought stock. And back when it was like HTML, like he's like a massive power seller right now on eBay, but he had never really bought stock. And he's like, I need to buy stock in this. And it was when it was like, he had it offered when it was like $13.
Wow. By the way, he's still on the grind?
Yeah. So if you've ever seen, I always say, I tell people, if you've ever seen American Pickers, the show.
Yeah, of course.
So
Love those guys.
Mike used to work for my dad.
Mike, he did?
Yeah. And
Wow.
so my dad has been in that world and knows all that stuff. And so I grew up in a household.
Did he know Frank?
He knows Frank, but
rest in peace.
Or yes.
Yeah.
And so so like growing up, I had all of that kind of stuff around where it's like, crazy different phases where it's like, oh, here's 100 old clothing irons that are like up in the rafters, and because oh, now we're into irons, like comic books and like Buddy.
Your dad was a picker?
Yes, and what's crazy is at our bike shop.
I love that world, by the way. You don't know that about me, but I'm an antique guy. I love to antique.
Yeah,
I love it. Like on a
Saturday
he has 200.
I bet he has 200 auctions up right now on eBay.
That like he's hosting, that he's selling items.
Yeah.
Don't ever let him stop, by the way.
Yeah. Oh no, it's great. I mean, but even in our bike shop, which is hilarious, there was a period where for the majority of it, and like we had people that would ride across the United States. When somebody does that ride, they pick their route. And multiple times we had people come in because they wanted to see the shop, because in this tiny, tiny bike shop, the entire ceiling was model airplanes, some like 6-foot wingspans, some are like RC that could have worked back in the day. On 2 walls, we had literally like 20-foot battleships, like model battleships. On 1 wall, I'm like, and again, when I moved here to San Diego, I worked in a bike shop, and then I'd go back and I'm like, this is hilarious, because here's this premium real estate right in the shop where you should have a stand of accessories that are good markup. Instead, we have a full actual gas pump from like 1960 in this. We had one,
with the globe, with like the glass globe. And
yes. At one point, he had a full Coke machine that used to be in our house, by the way, like an old school Coke machine. Like, think of the real estate that takes up in a business that's a small footprint. And so, there was a lot of that kind of stuff.
We had an old Coke machine at Steiner Cleaners, and it was the type where you open the small window and you pull out the old bottle.
Yep.
Yeah. At one point, one of my interns was a descendant of the gentleman who created the Coke bottle.
Oh, interesting.
Terre Haute, Indiana.
Okay. Yeah. The old Coke bottles are actually really pretty, they were cool. So yes, I grew up around that world a little bit. I mean, we'd have people come in the bike shop, literally pickers, to sell stuff to him. And like, I remember there was a guy named, he'd come in, his name was Chiz, because he was always trying to chisel you down.
Was his nickname?
Yeah, the Chiz. I don't know if he knew that was his nickname, but his nickname was the Chiz, because he's always trying to chisel you down on price.
He's the guy you see coming from a mile away. So did you learn business tactics watching and being around your dad, like negotiation and, who, like, by the way, like the guy like the Chiz, like, now, like, a guy like that exists. Like, I never knew guys like that existed. I just took everybody on there.
Yeah. It's funny. I've talked about this where, again, around like intentionality. If my dad has been an incredible father, incredible mentor, if I were to say, man, one thing that would have been useful is actually probably learning more of the backside business.
Interesting.
I absorbed a ton of natural sales skills. And when I say sales skills, really just communication skills. He's a natural talker, and obviously being around that, being on I was a terrible mechanic that just led to anger and frustration. So
he could do anything with his hands and you couldn't.
Oh yeah. And which again, I could build bikes, but like there was better, like when like derailleurs, like if I had to work at the bike shop, when I worked at the bike shop here in San Diego, if I had to actually do repairs, they would have fired me, because they're working on like high-end $6,000 bikes. They'd be like, dude, I thought you worked at a bike shop. And I'm like, so I just worked on the sales floor.
That's funny.
so in that community, I will say one thing that was so helpful is it's actually a fairly diverse community, both economically and both racially, which surprises people in the Midwest. And so I got to deal with a ton of different personalities. That really helped me, I think, develop just like natural rapport skills. That I probably had a tendency naturally. I always tell people I'm more EQ than IQ. So I probably already had a little tendency of that. And then I had this exposure to, in a day, I'm going to talk to, in a summer, 50 different people from, a mom to a neuroscientist who's the biggest pain in the ass of the day to some dude who he might have a gun in his pocket, right? Like a whole swath of people. So that was really supportive. But yeah, I didn't have there wasn't the like back end systems and business piece so much that I was exposed to. And part of it, again, like my dad was old school. Like I said, like the accounting was done, like everything was pen and paper. Like when he's got to log into like stuff, he'd pull out the drawer on his desk and he's got his passwords written down. And like, so he had a friend who was an accountant that he to this day would say is a huge part of his business that made it work because he had access to a real smart guy that helped him on that side. So yeah, I would have liked to had a little more. So it wasn't as much of like hey, here's a free business education as probably it sounds.
So we're talking to Luke DePron. He's the founder of the Fit Men Project, and we'll get into the fitness side shortly. But let's get into, you switched to kinesiology. You're not a heavy kid growing up. You're an athlete.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people in fitness are in it from a point of past pain. You're in it, like what motivates you to be like kinesio? Like what attracted you to that life that you went that
really
direction?
was. I mean, I'm not even kidding. I was sitting in I remember, and I changed schools to do international business.
Okay.
So I literally changed entire colleges to do international business because I've always wanted to learn languages because I've always wanted to travel the world. And I thought an international job could take me around the world. I'm an explorer at heart. And hilariously, in about the fourth day of now this Spanish class, which was an incredible class because I walk in and I'm one of 3 men in this class. This was the best class ever.
Great
it's all
class.
Beautiful girls. Great class.
I was communicating. By the way, that was the communication and marketing college in Vegas.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what that was.
Yeah, this was the best class. And literally probably like the third day, the teacher goes, all right, so from here on out, no English is allowed. And I go, well, I folded my books up, stood up, and I was like, see ya. That's not going to work because I changed majors. So I brought a GPA that I worked really hard for, and I was like, it's going to tank it. Right. So I went and I had to change back to just regular business because I was like, I don't know any Spanish, even though I've been taking Spanish. Right. I know none. So again, it really did come from, I was in that accounting class. And part of it was, again, this was a very sterile class setting. The teacher was this was like textbook, like kind of Poindexter accountant feel. Couldn't have been a drier situation. I'm sure you could make accounting interesting with, world or with case studies of what's happening in
who knows?
Maybe. It was to the point where I go, I can't do this. And I literally went and changed kinesiology because I was like, what am I like spending time on? And I really was spending time as a skinny kid. I was like trying to build some muscle. So I'm reading about exercise. I was reading about nutrition. And I'm like, this is what you're doing with free time. Let's point it towards that. So I signed up. Yeah, I went to the kinesiology department and I wasn't even really sure. And again, this is part of that conversation around intentionality. I shifted that major. And if you were to ask me, hey, what do you want to be? What do you want to do with this? I wouldn't have said like, oh, I want to be a personal trainer necessarily. I didn't really know. And within that field, like there's different things you're doing because we had an actual phys lab, right? Like my girl who became my girlfriend, who is a wife, she graduated that same degree. She just went back to school to do, she literally tomorrow starts her internship as a surgical technologist. And she was probably star student because she has this background in anatomy and physiology and all these other courses that we got to take.
So you met her your junior year?
My senior year.
Your senior year.
Yeah.
And you stay in the area. She's younger?
So yeah, I met her my last semester, my senior year. I almost got out of this thing clean, man.
Yeah.
That's always my joke.
Yeah.
So I met her my senior year. I had a 3-month internship in Colorado where I worked at a sport performance clinic doing athlete performance. And we dated from afar. Neither of us thought we were actually gonna, but then when that time came, So then that was a big part of, I moved back to my hometown of Rock Island, and we dated about 2 hours apart. She was more of like a Chicago suburbs. And then on a whim, I was like, dude, I don't want to stay in my hometown. So on a whim, we're like, let's pick up and leave. And we moved to San Diego
together. She had no job. You had no job.
I had gotten a bike shop job through my rep. And so I'm making $14 an hour in San Diego.
As a college graduate. How old were you? 23?
I'm probably 23.
Okay.
Yeah. And she has no job yet with the same degree. We move out, and like 8 days before we're going to move, I'm like, yeah, so we probably need a place to stay.
Wow.
Roommates.com. End up with, it's so funny. Again, this is the intentionality piece. In my mind, I'm looking at like the map and I'm like, okay, well, like San Diego State, like that's probably like kind of center.
Yeah.
Again, maybe it's because my hometown's smaller, but I didn't realize like how big. And I'm like, oh, we're kind of pretty, we're 20 minutes from everything. So we move into a house with 3 grown men. Like, one's a paramedic fireman who was the landlord. He lived in like a part of the house that was like sectioned off that you didn't know if he was home. Another gentleman who was probably in his 50s, worked at the airport. Like I'm talking in the morning, he'd wake up, pull out a 40 from the freezer, drink that before he went to work. And then another guy, I don't know yet, dude, characters. And then another guy, if you remember the movie Superbad.
Yeah.
The guy who was the tweaker that hit him with the car and takes him to the party. This guy looked like him. His name was Ronnie, which I'm pretty sure is the character in the movie.
Fantastic.
Acted just like him. And we lived in this house with them. Thankfully we had our own bed. We had our own bathroom.
And you hadn't met these individuals before
never
you
met
went out
them,
there.
Never
you drive out there and you meet them for the first time.
Yeah.
When you get the room.
Yeah. And it ended with the one gentleman who worked at the airport. His name was Antonio. It ended with I wake up one night to like kind of some yelling and come out, and he's drunk with his nephew and he's pretty upset and he's mad that like apparently we hadn't cleaned the bathroom. I guess he didn't realize that we had our own bathroom. And this is so fun. This is so ridiculous. He literally starts calling me Aryan Nation. So at the time I have a shaved head and I do have 2 nautical stars that apparently get confused. I have my parents' names tattooed in them. And literally like, I'm about to have to beat the shit out of this dude in this hallway. And he's like an older, small man, but his nephew, at 19 could be a, I'm about to Veronica, V, go in there.
And you never used his bathroom.
No, we never used it. And I'm like,
You're
dude,
right.
I'm about to beat the shit out of this dude. This is like where this is going. Not even like I don't want to, but I'm like, I'm in this hallway. V, go back in there, close the door. Like there, like this, and he literally says something about knifing me. And I'm like, what is going on? Thankfully, the landlord happened to be home and heard it. So he came out and he was like, dude, can you go sit down? Like, will you not take this where it's going to go? Cause again, like not that I'm some big tough guy, but like, I would have smashed this dude. Like he's a drunk 50-year-old small man. It would have been bad for him. And at the time, I'm 23 and, wound up.
Young. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Athletic. Like, so that allowed us to break our lease early.
You left right after that. Goodbye.
Yeah. I came to the landlord. I'm like, obviously I can't have her here for her sake or mine.
Yeah.
Obviously.
How long were you there?
Dude, we were there 4 months. It was so fun. There was some funny periods. There was a time where that same guy.
That's crazy.
This is such a funny story. I'm going to tell you this one. Literally, that guy comes in and he goes, "Hey man," and he's a Mexican guy, and he goes, "Hey man, my friend, he's outside and he wants to come in, but I don't think he should come in. He just got out of jail." And I'm like, well, if he's your friend and you don't think he should come, I'm like, right. I don't want him in. I look outside and I'm not kidding you. It couldn't have been a more stereotypical movie guy. If you saw Training Day, the movie with Denzel Washington.
Yeah, of course.
It was exactly that. A very big Hispanic dude, like 6'2", muscular, tatted, wife beater, the black square frame, slick back hair. Like he couldn't have been a more of a movie character. And I'm thinking, if you're calling him your friend and you don't think he should come in, how do you think I'm feeling? Like, right. Let's not let him in. So it was a experience, man.
We put ourselves in situations when we're younger that you look back on them and, I look at my own kids and I say to myself, I'm like, before I even dare to think about getting upset or giving them input or advice on things they're doing, I'm like, dude, like you were a total jackass. Like, stop. Like,
yeah,
they're not even close. They don't even they don't even come within a scintilla of where I would, like, not even close to where
Yeah.
some of the dumb things that I did in my youth.
Do you feel that that is I would looking at my so I don't have children, looking at my
Yeah.
nephew who's, again, 16, so he's starting to get into, whatever 16-year-olds are doing. Do you look at that and I would say the same thing, like, he's obviously much tamer than some of the
Mhm.
situations I found myself in. Maybe it's environmental, but do you think it's more of just like a cultural shift, or is it like an environmental situation that your kids that you've established?
You look, I mean, as a kid, um, I think it's a cultural shift. I think it's environment. Um, I also think it's like my wife is this like super healthy, very staid New England, very responsible woman who was mostly involved in their upbringing while I was out chasing a buck for the first 10 years of their life.
Okay.
Not to say I wasn't involved. I was
Sure.
at every game and all that stuff, but mentally, I was very checked out. That was not the best period of my life
Sure.
relative to being a dad. I know that for sure. So I think, like, Mike and Iris, my parents were like in left field and had no idea what was going on with me. And, that's why at 15 years old, my dad was dropping me off at Bennett's Tavern to go with the Lebanese Mafia over to Garden State Racetrack
Yeah.
on a freaking Tuesday and Wednesday night because he
Yeah.
didn't go to the track because my mom wouldn't let him that night. Like, I could tell you, Benny Sapp doesn't do that, right?
Yeah.
We have a racetrack right near us. He's never bet a horse in his life. So,
That's so
like
funny,
the
right?
things I did as a kid, because my folks were just out to lunch
Mhm.
versus like my wife being, she's not helicopter, but she's present.
Yeah.
So that's a big
It's
piece of it.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting because I see that. I mean, again, and just I mean, and part of it, I look like as kids, like in a smaller community, we grew up like riding our bikes around, and so like there was a little riffraff and trouble that
Yeah.
would come from that. Yeah, it's
But you
interesting.
probably left the house. You're at the age where phones were yet to hit, right?
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day, I go, I think I grew up literally in the only pocket of time in the history of humans
Yeah.
that I would ever have wanted to be born in. Like I hit the lottery. I was born in 1984.
Mhm.
So Facebook, I can tell you exactly when. I remember exactly when it came out because I was in college,
22 years old. It's like
drunken.
2004, 2005.
I'm drunk walking across the dorm. We go past some girls. We're trying to
Yeah.
chat them up. And they're like, "Oh, find me on Facebook." Ding, I need to be on Facebook. I got to experience my youth with no smartphones,
Yeah.
no social media. And I look at kids today, like my niece and nephew, and it's like, gosh, man, what a challenging experience from the input side, because I experienced as an adult, like the distraction, the like just nonsense. But then also I think about, man, how sad for a kid today where like whatever little embarrassing moment that happens to you, like it's probably going to get recorded and shared, and like to go through my youth to not have that, I'm really blessed.
But you and I both left the house and knew what time dinner was and came back when dinner.
Yeah, and like
their
like
mom
riding
wasn't
our
calling.
bikes.
Maybe she called a friend's house once in a while if you
Yeah.
didn't come home, maybe.
Yeah.
But
Here's one
mostly
that I
no.
think's really crazy that like I'd be curious, did your kids do, or did you? So I don't know how old you are. I'm 40.
53.
Okay, so you got 10. You're a generation above. As a kid growing up in a smaller town, like I would go to my friends, we'd ride our bikes. I just walk in the house. Like I didn't knock.
Yes.
We just walk in. And I mean, I like, I don't think any kid today, I mean, I know my wife's nephew, like he doesn't even want to like have to go into like the Five Guys and order a sandwich. I'll
Yeah.
just call like, and so that it's just interesting differences with
The face-to-face
technology.
interaction.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it.
So you move out to San Diego, you have this insane living condition, you get a job at a bike shop. Let's get to your entrepreneurial journey. Let's
Sure.
talk about, like, you make it $14 an hour at a bike shop. Obviously that sucks and it's
Mhm.
not where you want to be long term.
Yep.
I'm sure your girlfriend at the time, you're not married yet, she gets a job. So now you've got two incomes coming in, right?
Oh yeah, she gets a job as a physical therapy assistant using her college degree, making like $9.50.
$9.50 an hour.
Yeah, and finally quit when she asked for a raise of like 50 cents and they wouldn't give it to her. Loved,
Crazy.
and I'll tell you what, really loved getting to go to the holiday party at the woman's house who lived in a mansion next
Yeah.
to all the San Diego Chargers.
So did you like, did that shape you to the point where you said, I'm going to go out on my own? Or when did you go out on your own? When did
Yeah.
you open up shop?
So at some point I was like, all right, I need to do something with this degree. So I went and got a personal training job, which I'd never done outside of my internship, which was sport performance. And so I worked at a studio again, I think I was making $14 an hour as a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a year, and I would say, I don't know what the catalyst of like, all right, I need to just do this on my own. I think it was actually the owners, because we were supposed to use their, we had to log in things, and they left their books open. And not that I was snooping, but when I'm like, when I was seeing a take home that was significant post tax, and to know what I was being paid felt almost criminal, as again, somebody who had a dad who had a small business and would pay people fairly. I was like, yeah, I'm done. So I started just doing my own personal training, like old school, like put up the flyers with the pull tabs. I don't know if it was Craigslist, like built up a clientele. I had some people I would train out of my apartment. And then I actually ended up hurting my back exercising, doing the thing to get healthy. And I got hurt, and I crawled into a chiropractic office, physically crawled. And that gentleman adjusted me. And as he's working on me, he's like talking to Veronica, because she's like, well, I already tried traction. And he realized, like, we obviously have some knowledge in this. He's negotiating a job with her while I'm getting worked on. And I ended up working for him, or I ended up renting. Well, how did this go? So I have a lot of admiration for this guy. This really shifted my career tremendously. And
so you were working as a personal trainer. You hurt your back. You doing your own thing. Yep. You hurt your back, and you hurting your back leads to
a whole corrective exercise experience. So again, connecting the dots.
Break of your professional and entrepreneurial journey.
Massive educational growth opportunity. And it happened, yes, because I got hurt. And so once I got better, I kind of became friends with this guy, because Veronica's now working there, and he's still treating me, which again was, I'll say it, for free. Like, this dude did a ton for me.
Wow.
And at one point he goes, so where are you training? And he goes, well, why don't you just use my office when I'm not using it? And I go, that would be insane. Like, I would have a little bit more equipment, because he was more of just a true chiropractor at the time.
Yeah.
And he's running like a half-day split. He's still surfing. So at one point I'm carrying in my 200 pounds worth of dumbbells every morning and a bench. Finally convinced him, hey, if I buy a bench that collapses down, could I just keep it here? And he even said, he goes, if you build this up at some point, I'll charge you some rent. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. It goes from that to, hey, why don't you actually work and help? I have a client who's got some back stuff. So he started shoving me some people. And eventually he actually just brought me on. And at one point I'm kind of become the pretend physical therapist there.
Oh, wow.
That company began to grow. He began to expand. He's also an entrepreneur at heart, and he's always looking for growth. So I can't remember how many years there, but I obviously had exposure to, now I'm doing corrective exercise. I'm working with people who've been injured. I can really, really help some people who have low back pain, like as a professional. And as that, company began to grow, it began to get a little bit more corporate. And what used to be I'm working for somebody, but felt like a ton of freedom and kind of working with a friend, started to feel a little bit constrained.
Yeah.
And if you were to ask me what drives me, 100% what drives me is to probably an unhealthy degree, is autonomy and control. And so once I saw where that was going, I was like, I got to go do my own thing. And I went back into doing my own coaching. And then eventually, so I rented space somewhere else where I truly am just in control of my own thing, still doing corrective exercise, still doing rehab kind of on my own. But I've always been interested in the like long-term kind of transformation. And I ended up trading a coach through a life coaching certification. And it was really impactful, because I learned these other skills that help fill the gap that was happening in the personal training model, where I wanted to create these transformations for folks where they get to fully embody being healthy and fit, but oftentimes they wouldn't. They would do good when they're with me, but then when it was time to go on their own, they'd eventually kind of slide back. And 6 months later, I check in, or a year, it's like, oh, I'm back to my old ways. The life coaching piece kind of helped me understand there needs to be a growth gap, which led to me transitioning to an online model where I now manage fitness, we manage the nutrition, we manage the lifestyle. And again, there's a lot of mindset. And I don't like necessarily market and push that because it's not the attractive thing. But every guy that works with me, they're like, that's the part that was like mind blowing for them.
The
And it was
attractive thing is losing weight.
sure, yeah, of course.
Right.
Losing weight,
That's
looking
what
better.
that's when people come to you because they want to lose weight.
Yeah, but my end goal, and really this is like becomes my pitch. It's like my goal is for to be the last time you ever have to deal with this.
Yeah.
Like this is not like I'm going to teach you to fish, and the online model is the perfect place for that because you need a growth gap.
How long have you been on your own?
Oh, 10 years probably.
10 years.
Probably, yeah, 10 or yeah, probably.
And of those 10 years, have all 10 been in the life coaching model versus the fitness model?
No. And so again, I would still say I'm in the fitness model. Yeah. But when I say the life coaching, meaning in the online, I'd say I've been doing the online remote coaching now 5 years, probably.
5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, I'll be candid with you. Like that's a really hard business to be in, right? But when I met with you, and full disclosure, you and I don't work together on a professional level, right? Yep. You met me as I was
progress.
I was in progress. I'm guessing the people that you are best with are the ones who need to get themselves into progress that you take through that journey. I mean, is that when when people are disgusted, the best time that
it helps. You got to be fed up. It does help to be fed up. I do meet a lot of people where it's like they're at the kind of like the end of the rope, like, oh shit, I got to do something. A lab came back. Like I just got a guy that just started and it's like A1Cs are peaking and it's like, okay. But I do get a lot of guys that are just like, I'm doing a lot of stuff and it's not working. It's like, yeah, we need to organize and systematize this. And,
have the drugs hurt your Have the drugs hurt your business? The needles?
Maybe. I'm
like the shortcuts, the cheat codes, right?
Sure.
I mean,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know who would have maybe worked with me that decided to go that route.
Fair enough.
Most guys that I'm working with, it's kind of cool, man. I've had the last few people that have signed up for coaching. They're like, they've said these like magic words, which is something I used to try to push, but it's not sexy. It's like, they're like, dude, I'm trying to like make this a lifestyle. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we need. And so I do get those people who are like, often most have kids. Again, they're trying to grow businesses. They're busy. They're not like Mr. Joe Fitness. They're not necessarily looking to be. They're not trying to get on a bodybuilder stage. It's like, dude, I want to have more energy. Like, I want to make sure I'm here for my kids. I had a guy who just wrapped up coaching, and he's like, his big why. When we get to the mindset stuff, like we have to craft out, like, why are you doing it? And literally, he wrote down, he's like, so my kids do not have to hire somebody to do this. And I'm like, that type of like transformational lifestyle.
His kids are young.
Yeah, he just had it. Literally, he signed up with coaching, and he goes, he's like, my wife's due soon. I go, oh, when's she due? He goes, could be today.
Yeah. Wow. So he doesn't want his kids to know him as someone who's obese or overweight.
Yeah, and dude, kids are the awesome driver. It's so funny, man. Kids are
my kid.
For some people, kids are the excuse on why they can't, and for other people, they're the driver on why they're going to do it.
I don't believe that you can't. I do believe it's as simple as making a constant choice. I think the reason you and I hit it off is because I really believe in what you believe in, and what you said to me was how I was feeling and how I was thinking. Because I've constantly failed with my journey. Prior to where I'm at today. I mean, back in 2014, I also lost 35 pounds and was in the 160s as an adult. And then, 5 pounds a year would creep on until I finally got to that point where 5 pounds a year was no longer 5 pounds a year, but it was 5 years with 30 extra pounds.
Yep.
Felt great when it was 160s, didn't feel good in the 190s, but I kept going in that weight range because I just didn't want to make the choice, even though like eating the foods I ate made me feel like crap. It was all mouth pleasure. It was all mouth pleasure stuff, right? It was like, dude, that's how I did it.
Stress, massive piece of it, right? Like, so we're food coping to manage stress, alcohol to manage stress at times. And then, again, when I say like a lifestyle, that's the lifestyle component. It's easy to say like, all right, I'm going to take 30 days and like hunker down on my fitness. And it's like, who gives a shit? Like, we got to be able to do something for the next year / lifetime approach.
Yeah. Well, that's what I identified with you about is I'm an extremist. Like that's how I live. That's how I've lived
Yeah,
my
we
entire
talked
life.
about that. Yeah.
That's how I live my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is really the first time I've ever taken a first off, for 90 days, I took an extreme approach.
Yes. And I remember, yep.
That's just the way I did it.
Mhm.
That's how my body and my mind works, right? I was 1,200 calories a day for 90 days plus a fitness routine. And
Yep.
that's what I did. I felt physically great when I did it.
Yep.
I then started to introduce non-processed, but more calories than I was in, and basically live my life.
Yeah.
And I did that when I was at a weight where I was where it was acceptable and happy. But where I identified with you, Luke, was that it was like, dude, like you got to live your life. Like you want an ice cream, go get an ice cream. Like if you want a piece of cake, have a piece of cake. Just make the choice to have a piece of cake. Don't eat it in a mindless way where you're just shoving it in your face.
Yep. Bringing some intentionality. Again, I'll use that word. A lot of people are doing, they're just habitually eating. And when you do, like, I take people through quite a bit of like education too. And again, I don't like shove this down their throats that like, this is what we're going to do, but I want you to have an understanding, because when you understand like the mechanisms at play around, say, like processed foods, you start to understand like why you ate all of it. I will eat all of the cookies. Me too. Mr. Luke Fitness. How many cookies do you want? All of them. I'm going to eat. I don't even like barbecue chips, but I would smash them if they're there. So like understanding the mechanisms at play, both in like the processing of foods, which we could talk about, understanding literally like the physiological implications of like how you even lose weight. It's like, yeah, you are going to have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight, but you do not have to exist there. So understanding there can be phases of this. And so with a lot of guys that I'm working with, I kind of take it a little bit of a different path than like what you necessarily did is, hey, let's front load getting some foundational pieces set, which you will see some success along the way. Then once you have that layered in, if you want to pull the lever hard, you now have the frameworks and the tools to do it. And then you just have to understand that there's different periods where this may make sense to do. I got a guy right now who we've actually worked together longer than I work with most people. And it's kind of been slow, but it's like, it's the reality of the season that he's in with a young kid, and he's still building his business and he's traveling every weekend. And it's like, hey, that is what it is. I got somebody else where it's like, you have the bandwidth to like push right now. Let's push and like, let's get this. And it's like, he's down, 20 pounds in 12 weeks. He's a bigger guy. That's a very fast rate of change. And so just understanding like there's probably going to be different seasons of your life, but you better have some foundational pieces that are layered in, and then you can pull those levers as needed when required and when really available to you, right? Like if you're telling me you're going to go travel for like, oh, I got to go close a deal in China. And it's like, hey, I bet like you're going to be drinking some alcohol over there. And like, maybe that's not the time to make a massive push versus, hey, you have this bandwidth where 8 weeks where like, you're going to be able to be a little bit more hyper-focused. Okay. We can push a little harder.
Yeah. I don't drink calories, by the way.
Yeah, no, I know you don't. Yeah. Which is great. And, we talked about identity, mindset and identity. And I remember when we first talked, you go, listen, man, I'm an old guy. I'm set in white ways. And I didn't challenge you much on it, but it's, and I do with clients, because the reality is like, we can change. We are going to have to change.
Yeah.
And the alcohol is always a good example of this for people who have made that choice of abstinence. It's, whether we like identify as I'm an alcoholic, I can't drink, or I don't drink, but we can create new identities, step into new identities that are going to be super supportive to our goals. So there is that growth shift to where it's like, it's the I become. So like with a lot of my clients, it's like they become fit dad. And it's like, we start making decisions through that. And it's like, yeah, fit dad doesn't drink. And people struggle to understand, like somebody who has classified themselves, and I don't know if this would be you, by the way, anybody who's like, oh, like I'm an alcoholic, I don't drink. It's like, you could have that same headspace, just like a vegan. Like a vegan doesn't go to Texas and like stumble into eating barbecue. Like, oh, well, I'm a vegan, but I was in Texas. You can create those same kind of stories, frameworks where you are able to navigate any scenario. So same thing with me. It's like, I haven't had fast food since I was like 20 years old. And when I say fast food, I mean, I haven't had McDonald's,
Burger King.
Yeah. But you know what I do have? What? I have Burger Lounge. Is Burger Lounge fast food? Yeah.
What about like Chipotle?
Yeah, I would eat Chipotle. And so this is what I mean by like gamifying some of this. I've quantified that not as fast food, but now I've eliminated all of this decision,
Yep.
all of this. And it's like, those are not even options.
Do you think limiting decisions is important in the journey?
Huge,
Yeah.
huge.
So a couple things that I just want to bring up. Food prep. Important?
Depends. Again, this all comes down to, so it's so funny. Guys will work with, I saw a post from a guy the other day, and he's like, I'd never work with a fitness coach that doesn't have kids. And I'm like, I understand. I can appreciate the sentiment of what he's saying. And it's like, you know, I've coached and helped a lot of women, and I don't have a vagina, right? Like I don't have to be in your exact world.
Yeah.
But it's because people think, oh, I'm going to go do your lifestyle. And it's like, that is a fail. It's how do you take these foundational pillars of health and wellness and fit them into your unique lifestyle. If you have a newborn, 3 kids, or you got kids that you got to get out of school at 7 a.m., getting up and prepping this major breakfast, probably not realistic for you.
No,
so
but I'm talking about like Sunday nights.
Some do, some don't.
You know that it's all about what your life is, very specific to the individual.
100%.
All right. So let me tell you what one of the things I did that was a big unlock for me, and you can give me your opinion on this.
Sure. Yeah.
I eat foods I like.
That's the only path forward.
I mean, like, I like anchovies. I like beets. I like pickles.
Mm-hmm.
I like mushrooms. Like, I wanted hummus. I like hummus. I wanted the fruit, apples. I like apples. I wanted food I like that tastes good that I could eat. I like to eat a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Isn't that crazy? 1,200 calories. I like to eat a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I would have salads. I would literally make myself a salad. I'd put tuna on the top of it. And it would be so big, I'd have to take a break in the middle of eating it. I'd have like red wine vinegar. I might use the oil from the anchovies. It would be so big, I'd have to take a break eating it to finish it. And it's no more than 400 or 500 calories. And I don't want anything when I'm done.
Yep. Food volume. So we're talking again. So when it comes to actual weight loss, there's really 2 things at play: physiological hunger, psychological desire. Those are the 2 things you're trying to mitigate. Some people do have more food noise. This is where the GLP-1 shots are relevant for certain people, to where like they do just have much more hormonal signaling.
So you're not anti the shots?
I'm not, in the sense of, for 90% of people don't need them, but like if you're a 500-pound person,
but if somebody came to you and they wanted to work together and they said, hey, Luke, I'd really like a jump charge and I want to take a shot, you're not like, no, you can't work with me?
I wouldn't say that. And I would, obviously, I would preface first with, hey, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving you advice. I get that disclaimer out. But I would tell you this: if you haven't yet organized your lifestyle, your diet, your fitness, and your nutrition, you have no business pulling that trigger.
None of that's going to matter.
No.
Because it's going to be a short-term fix, just like every other short-term fix.
Yeah. I had a client back in the day. She won Project Runway at like 400 pounds, so a fashion show, and she's a plus-size designer. And she did a gastric, and she's lost like 200 pounds. And it's the best thing that she could have ever done for her. Do I wish, and she's even said this, she goes, I wish I could have done what you were trying to get me to do. And it's like, yeah, but you weren't psychologically in a position to do it. So are you in a better spot now? Yeah, you are. Like, so I would encourage people to make sure you do everything that you possibly can. I mean, I've met people who are doing Ozempic, and I'm like, they're like, yeah, I'm doing this. And then I'm like, dude, you're drinking beers right now. Like, you have such low level, like, things that you could deal with before you'd have to do that. Like, you're literally drinking beer.
Right.
Like, so what are we doing here? And again, that's looking for a shortcut, and that person won't have long-term success.
Right. I mean,
so the person
6 beers, you're talking about 1,200 calories. Like, forget it. You have no chance.
To come back to your point, and this is 100%. Everything you eat, you should be enjoying. There should be no forcing foods that you don't enjoy. This is how we build a lifestyle. Food volume, what you're talking about, is you managed to make a high volumizing food that delivers a high satiety. You feel full, you don't want more. 90% of weight loss comes down to I just made up that statistic, by the way. The vast majority of weight loss, it's going to come down to mitigating processed foods. Now, for you, as an all-in, all-out guy, you said, okay, I don't eat processed foods. Hey, if we can run an identity into that, great. Or for most people, we figure out, how do we manage processed foods? And you can.
1 ingredient foods, anything that anything that comes in a box, you exclude. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out what a processed food is and
Yeah,
what a
that will
processed
get
food
you
isn't.
there, but it's also important for most people, and again, I know you're on the extreme side, all in, all out.
Yeah.
When I meet people who tell me like, "I'm all in, all out," and I'm like, "Well, it seems like you're all out a lot more than
Yeah.
you're all in."
By the way, I don't feel like I'm all in, all out anymore. I
Oh,
mean,
right. Yeah.
I mean, my wife bought my wife is I call her Le Saboteur.
That's
Because
great.
she's
funny.
and she looks great right now too, because she's lost a ton and looks awesome. Not, I shouldn't say a ton, that's not going to help me. uh that let's hope that's not a clip that goes viral, huh?
Sure. Yeah.
But no, I mean, she's lost, I've lost. It's the first time we've ever really been on this together. But I call her Le Saboteur because she took a sourdough class in the middle of it with her friends, and she's
That's
been
funny.
like making sourdough.
Sure.
And, we're twisting pretzels and we're
Yep.
making sourdough, and she's making focaccia. And one of the things I cut out was all breads.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that was something that wasn't necessarily great for me during my journey.
Yep.
And I've reintroduced them,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't feel good when I eat them. So even sourdough. So I've tried to, again, I know I can't stay where I'm at and enjoy my life.
Yep.
If I am all in or all out ongoing.
Sure.
But for a committed period of time, I thought that was the best way for me to go.
Yeah.
Had I
And,
met
and it's, you've
your
had success
timing,
with it.
by the way, your timing, I know we met because I posted something for accountability, but had we met previous, I may not have been able to get to that point on my own. And a relationship with you would have been of great benefit, which is why I'm grateful that I could introduce you both as a person and professional and entrepreneur and business owner in this space to my small, but my audience.
Sure.
And
Well,
I got to tell you, like, I love what you're doing. And like I said, I think you and I think very similar, which is means you're probably a psychopath, but no, I do like I do love the way you think, and I do think that people would benefit by being with you.
awesome. Oh, I appreciate it. And the food, like I said, the food, I know we're probably wrapping up here, but the food thing, I always tell people, it's like, I have an intake form. I'm like, if there's a table of desserts, every dessert in the world, what are you going to pick? And it's like, let's maybe figure out how to include that at some point in your life. Right. Like, and I have guys that'll be like, I don't want it like right now. I'm like, great. But I'm like, at some point, like in my hometown, we have this Whitey's ice cream, and it's like, hey, let's figure out how to go and have a scoop of ice cream versus like, hey, we used to just pick up a malt every freaking Friday. And, understanding that you can integrate quote bad foods, and there's strategies to do it. And then there's gonna be some foods, like, again, I can't have lots of stuff around me because I'd eat it all. So it's all about just personalizing it and figuring out, again, your personal psychology and what's going to impact you. And then how do we make those puzzle pieces fit?
Luke, I love it. Luke DePron, how can people get a hold of you?
Easiest place, obviously, you can go to fitmenproject.com. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn as well. Those are probably like the two best spots.
Great to chat with you. I really enjoyed it. You're an awesome guy who's doing great work to help people change their lives. And over the last 10 years, I'm sure you've amassed a ton of friends who are, deeply committed to that, to what you've done for them. And I'm sure anybody who wants to hear from them could probably ask you for referrals. You have them by the
Sure.
bushels.
Yeah, absolutely.
mean,
it's a cool, I tell people, it's cool to see somebody lose weight, sure. But as you've probably already kind of started to share too, it's really neat to hear how good somebody feels. And
totally.
like, yeah, I always joke, I'm like, there's a reason every person who starts exercising and eating well, they become obnoxious with it. They're posting their workouts. They're posting photos of their salad. They're posting photos of their anchovy tuna salad for everybody to see.
Funny.
And you know why? Because they feel really good and they want other people to have a little taste of this.
I would hope. Okay. All right. Given my potential obnoxious level that I could be at, I would hope I'm at the bottom of the scale of how obnoxious I possibly could be about. Although I will say this. So, and we'll close with this. My son graduated college, and that was the impetus for me to get healthy,
right,
to take forever pictures. And my wife put me on straight up restriction to how much I could talk about my weight over the weekend.
See? I'm telling you, man, it is the magical elixir that everybody is looking for, getting healthy and fit. And when you understand it's actually more of a return to a standard, a return to what should be normal, it doesn't require superhuman effort, but you will get what feels like superhuman results. And yeah, man, I love it because people are gonna like champion that drum. And it's so wild to me because I'll have people that will like, oh, I wish you could work with this guy. And like, you got to be ready to do the work
Yeah.
yourself. And if you are, man, jump in, whether it's me, somebody else, get some help, get to the other side of this because wow, there's such a different experience of life. And, if you're in that, I would say if you're in that like 30, 40, kind of 45 range, like, dude, you're at a choice point, man. Life can be very different
Well,
depending
that's
on
why
the
I got
decisions you
scared. I
make.
mean, 53 years old, I got scared that I wasn't going to
Yeah.
be able to do it as I got older. So I needed to take action. And let
Yep.
me tell you, like I'm a guy who's experienced a lot of highs and lows in my life. Put it that way. The greatest high, the greatest high, without question, is when you see somebody and they ask you 4 words.
What have you been
Have
doing?
you lost weight? Well, as a
Yeah, man.
matter of fact, I have.
Yeah. Let me tell you all about it.
I don't. I swear I don't. I promise. Luke
That's great, man.
DePron,
But
thank you so much. Great to chat with you. I appreciate your time today.
Jay, I appreciate you bringing me on. I love your energy, man. You're a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to JaySapChats. I hope you leave a little bit better than you came. And here's wishing you a beautiful week.